wrong to the modern world at a time when we are trying to abolish any sense of sin. They frontally oppose the swastika with the cross. They have become its avowed Christian antagonists. They are lending God's garment to world democratic aims. That was what the Nazis said. And I don't think actually that a Nazi who bullied or tortured or betrayed a Jew was actually obeying his inner voice. I think he was obeying an ambition to be in with the boss, and it was the wrong boss.
You don't think then that an inner voice can be warped, that the so-called conscience can be colored?
Oh, heavens alive. Of course it can if you want to. That's why you get so many church leaders who disbelieve in absolute moral standards, which are Christ's standards. They have a compromise. They use their brain to kill a part of their conscience. Then they get up in public and say, everybody compromise like us and you'll be more comfortable people to live with. But I don't think it's the way what people should do. You don't have to censor the inner voice.
Do you think, Mr. Howard, that there's a difference between these words about morality and books on morality and the actions of morality? Are we really relating ourselves to the real world and talking about morality?
Well, I can't speak for yourself. I know that I have to deal with the real world all the time. I have to deal with people who very often put on a front of great success, great triumph, and underneath is emptiness and terrible frustration. You see, the world is full of people who don't love their fellow men enough to bring an answer to the sin that binds and blinds them. They tell them, don't worry, there's nothing in it. And they send their patients away sick unto death. I'm dealing with the real world because I know that sin can be cured. And I want to help my friends, and my enemies too, if they'll let me, to find the cure for it.
In the last minute that we had, can you give me a forecast, a prediction? You say sin can be cured, and we need a massive assault, a massive change of character. Will this happen?
I believe it will, and I'll tell you why. I think we're living in the age of greatest opportunity and greatest danger that ever confronted man. I have faith in the common man in every country. I believe when he sees that the old, small, deadly hates and fears and greeds that for so long have imprisoned him may actually destroy civilization, he will change. And I believe that change is not only possible but necessary and even adventurous.
Do you have evidence to support your belief?
Heavens alive, give me another half hour one day and I'll talk to you about nothing but the evidence, and then you'll say I'm boasting, but I won't be.
You're convinced that the spread of moral rearmament is this answer?
I know that moral rearmament is going to come to the hearts of the earth, or the earth may destroy itself.
Just one last question. What is moral rearmament's position in relation to the problem of substituting for the church which you feel is being tainted?
Oh, I think moral rearmament should be the normal life of every churchman and every Christian. It's not a substitute for the church. The churches don't need it, but churchmen do.
Thank you very much. Mr. Peter Howard, who is convinced it is past time to put our moral house in order, and who tells us God alone can shift the furniture of the human heart.
Viewpoint moves to its new starting time next Sunday on Channel 2. That's next Sunday at 1 for Viewpoint.
I am a revolutionary. That doesn't mean that I'm going to set about you with a pickaxe afterwards or chop off your head or intrigue to have you shot. It does mean that I want to see the whole of human society transformed in your lifetime, and if possible in mine. And I want to see that come about by the most radical and practical revolution.
This is Peter Howard, world leader of moral rearmament, who died February 25th in Lima, Peru. For 25 years, he gave his life to an idea which has caught the imagination and spurred to action men of every age and rank in the task of remaking the world.
I think there's nobody more reactionary, whatever they call themselves, liberal, conservative, left, right. The real reactionaries of our times are the people who want to see the world different, but are absolutely determined to remain themselves selfish, comfortable, and undisturbed.
I knew this man, Peter Howard. He made a friend of everyone he met, whether peasant or statesman, boss or worker, men of every race and background. Black, white, brown, and yellow. Perhaps no one in this century outlined the earth-shaking issues facing the age as he did. Certainly no one more convincingly and clearly gave the answer. Howard understood the great issues of his age. The communist world was divided. The free world was aimless, and many leaders were turning to moral rearmament in their need. They invited Howard to consult with them. During a 10-week visit to America in 1964, Peter Howard made addresses in 25 cities and 14 states, crossing the continent 5 times. In Boston, he spoke to the state legislature of Massachusetts, where he was introduced by the president, Senator John Powers.
Peter Howard is one of the most remarkable men of this or any other era. Most mortals would be very proud and happy to attain distinction in one particular line of endeavor. Mr. Howard is one of those very rare individuals, gifted by the Almighty with the talent to reach the top in everything to which they turn their hands. Peter Howard is in charge of the world program of moral rearmament. In that capacity, he has entree into the homes, into the offices of the world's leaders. I am privileged, I am proud, I am honored to present to you Peter Howard. Peter, stay right up here. If you want me to introduce some of these people first? Yes, I think that's right.
I and my friends want to see the branches of that great tree of liberty stretch out across the entire world, so that once more from end to end of God's earth, men and women may lift up their hearts and hands proudly to him and say, "Thank God for freedom." Surely to heaven, free men under God can create a revolutionary pattern of society that all men will recognize and join. I believe that thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, is a concept far more revolutionary than anything Karl Marx or Hitler haven't helped him thought of. If it's a commitment and not just a pious drone.
Several times he circled the globe. He traveled to Asia, where he joined Rajmohan Gandhi on his march through India, and to Japan, where he conferred with former Prime Ministers Kishi and Yoshida, to Burma, Vietnam, Europe, the Americas, and Africa. The leaders of 16 African nations invited Peter Howard with other moral rearmament leaders to visit their countries. At the Athi River detention camp in Kenya, He personally met leaders of the Mau Mau. He described the real issues behind the race conflict in the world. The Mau Mau said to him, "If we had known there were Englishmen like you in the world, there would never have been Mau Mau."
Some of those former Mau Mau leaders saw white men change. They learned that black men too could change. They changed. They understand that violence, sometimes regarded as a good servant, can swiftly become a bad master, and that history never long remains on the side of hate. They are now fighting with people of all colors and races to bring God's revolution to the continent of Africa. Hate knows no color bar, neither does love.
Peter Howard spoke fearlessly and with keen insight on many vital issues of the day, such as the crisis in Vietnam.
Now, at this moment, as we sit here in paddy fields and swamps, in jungle darkness and slime and the stench and mud of fetid rivers, Americans, Vietnamese, villagers and soldiers are putting to the test with their blood and suffering whether freedom shall or shall not endure in Vietnam. Without expressing views about the policies or character of DM or the news, one thing is certain. The United States, for the first time in the history of the country, encouraged the overthrow in time of war of a duly elected government fighting loyally against the communist invader. The bill for that deed has yet to be presented, but be absolutely sure that bill is coming in.
TV commentators found him an interesting and provocative guest.
Mr. Howard, what is moral rearmament, and what are your aims?
Our aim is to build the great society, but we don't believe the great society can be built just by landscaping America, important as that is, or by Medicare, vital as that is, or even by helping the poor people in the Appalachians and other underprivileged sections of this great country.
It's not a political aim, then?
No, it's not. Our belief is the great society can only come out of greatness in men, the real great society. And we believe that at the moment you have a situation where man himself needs to be modernized. You see, we've got technologically, industrially, and scientifically the power to span the stars, to destroy the world, to probe the oceans, but we remain moral and spiritual dwarfs. We are driven by the same old hates and fears and selfishness and greed that animated us in the jungle and cave. And moral rearmament's aim is to modernize man, to equip his character to meet the challenge of the century.
Is moral rearmament the answer to communism?
I think that communism is not the real problem. I think that communism is a faith which can only succeed insofar as other faiths fail across the world. I don't mean the failure of faiths, I mean the failure of people who live in them. I think moral rearmament is actually the answer to materialism, and I think materialism is the breeding ground of all the isms, including communism.
What's your attitude towards the United Nations?
I think the United Nations desperately needs moral rearmament. I think it's a noble ideal, and I've been there many times. The problems on the table are colossal, and unless they're solved, you and I may be living in a very different kind of world in the future. But the problems on the table are nothing like so grave as the problems sitting around the table, and nobody tries to tackle them. I think unless we deal with human nature thoroughly and drastically on a colossal scale, the United Nations may not only break up and lead to the disintegration of society, but it could even become the instrument that would abolish freedom in large sections of the earth. I think it needs moral rearmament.
Do you think America should change its position in barring Red China from the UN?
I think America should live an ideology so big that it embraces the whole of the earth and so powerful that it actually changes the selfishness of the extreme right, which creates much of the bitterness of the extreme left. I think with a global aim, with an ideology, America could welcome anybody into the United Nations. I think without an ideology, America would be very foolish to do it.
Then you think we should admit Red China?
No, because I don't think America has an ideology. I think she needs one.
Speaking about the races of America in Atlanta, Georgia, Peter Howard said, "I do not say be patient, I say be passionate for something far bigger than color."
The different races in America are her strength and glory. They can be her supersonic missile of revolution in the modern world. They are no handicap. They're an asset that no other country on God's earth possesses. Supposing America, with her Negro and Latin American and Caucasian and Indian minorities,
were able to proclaim in honesty to the listening earth, come and see how all men everywhere are meant to live. We need you all in our bid to change world history, which is the destiny of our age. In this dangerous, essential task, black men, white men, all men are needed.
He was the best of England, a true friend of America. Scholar, farmer, sportsman, Peter Howard was born with a lame leg, and he rose through sheer grit to become one of the great rugby footballers at Oxford and captain for England in international competition. In 1939, the speed and danger of bobsledding captured him, and he was chosen for the British team that broke the world record that year. He married Doris Metaxa, a Wimbledon tennis champion. He soon became Britain's highest paid columnist for Lord Beaverbrook's Daily Express. Upon his death, the Daily Express paid tribute to him. He brought to Fleet Street considerable learning, abounding high spirits, and unsparing wit. One gift he brought to journalism was an astounding memory. At times, he remembered facts about public men which they might have preferred to be forgotten. His pen was feared in Westminster. Peter Howard was a prolific writer. His 12 books, published in 16 languages, sold 4 million copies. Every penny of royalties, totaling over $1.25 million, he turned back into the financing of moral rearmament. For his recent book, Designed for Dedication, Cardinal Cushing of Boston wrote the foreword. He said, "His words are a challenge for all. They bring an extraordinary clarity about America and the world." He wrote 16 plays which were produced on London's West End, Broadway, and throughout the world. His plays were provocative and controversial. Answering one critic, he said, "I write them to give people a purpose. The purpose is clear. The aim is simple. It is to encourage man to expect the growth in character that is essential if civilization is to survive. It is to enlist everybody, everywhere, to remake the world." This year, the student leadership in 73 colleges in America and Canada invited Mr. Howard to speak on their campuses. It was an impossible task, considering the time he had available, 4 weeks. It became a whirlwind tour of 17 universities from Dartmouth to Southern California. From the Northwest to the Deep South, everywhere it was the same. A thunderous response to Howard's blazing challenge to a generation who want to know, want to fight, want to see their nation rise in its world calling.
Now, my interest in life is revolution. And it's a revolution which involves not just the West, but the world and everybody in it. And it won't be accomplished by moral platitudes which, in my country at any rate at election time, are scattered so lavishly and which seem to be unable to awaken good men from selfish complacency or to send bad men to sleep. They just do nothing. It won't be accomplished by atomic force, which, if it spreads and is unleashed, must destroy civilization as we know it on this planet. It won't be accomplished by hot air or cold steel. It'll be accomplished by an explosion, a thunderstorm of the human heart, if you like, created by men and women who realize that the modernization of man is the great task of our times. Now, people talk a lot about democracy, fascism, and communism. I believe very few people in the West understand the real nature of freedom or the causes of its destruction. Democracy is not just the way men and women vote every 4 years. It's possible to pour out millions of dollars, words, and votes, and to leave a nation more confused, divided, and endangered than before. The life of liberty and its death both depend on how men live and what they live for all the time.
Often the students would ask Peter Howard to clarify the basic purpose of his work.
Everybody wants to see the other person change. Every class wants to see the other class change. Every nation wants to see the other nation change. Every color wants to see the other color change. But everybody's waiting for the other to begin. In moral rearmament, we believe that if you want to see the world, or your country, or even your home or school different, the most practical place to start is with yourself, and then give it to the other fellow. We think there's nobody more selfish, actually, than the person who by and large is out to make his own way in the world and hopes that somebody else will look after the rest of the world. Also, we believe in absolute moral standards, honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love. Now, these are standards. Get this straight. You're not confronted by a saint with flapping wings. I wish you were. I'm a very ordinary man. But I do have standards to which I trim my life. There's a thing called the North Star. It's been up in the sky for some time. Nobody has yet recorded any vessel or ship reaching that star. But for centuries, captains of vessels have got a fix on that star, known from it where their vessel is in the ocean and where they have to steer, setting a new course. I believe in accepting absolute moral standards as my standards, measuring the places in life where I make mistakes, and I make many, putting right what I can put right, and then going ahead on a new course each day.
Peter Howard had a great vision for America and her younger generation.
I believe that moral rearmament is the revolutionary issue of our times. It's the next step for America and the world, and the logical next step for the communist as well as the non-communist world. Young and old Americans who comprehend the need of revolution and give their lives to it will set the pace of the next century. They will be the Washingtons and Lincolns in this age of staggering danger and opportunity.
The student asked, what must happen for this revolution to come about?
I think somewhere men and women now have got to arise with the guts to say, we will become part of a revolution where we give everything to bring the whole world under the control of the living God, to make that old prayer come true, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, not as a pious drone, but as a passionate commitment.
At every college, students wanted to know how they could take an effective part in this revolution.
I tell you what you can do at once then. President Johnson speaks of a great society, and I think it's a phrase that has captured the imagination of the world. I think you might get to work on this campus. You might start off with yourself, make an honest experiment in absolute moral standards. I don't mean you'll become a saint. You may be one already, I can't say, I never met you before. You take those absolute moral standards, write them down, spend 3 or 4 minutes thinking out where you yourself might make a start. Then set to work on your 10 close friends or your 10 worst enemies on the campus. If you've got enemies, put things right with them. If they're 99% wrong and you're 1% wrong, it's much easier for you to make a start with your 1% than for them with their 99. At the end of a week, you might have something entirely new going through this campus. At the end of a month, you and your friends might send a message to the White House. You might say, President Johnson, you talk about a great society, we're building it here. There's no more dishonesty in our schools. Nobody cheats here. There's no secrets in any home on the campus. The men and women are living straight. We all want to sacrifice our selfishness for America instead of sacrificing America for our selfishness. Come and look here and see on our campus the secret of the great society you want for the nation. If you did that, President Johnson would come. If he found what you claimed, there might be an answer for North, South, East, and West in this country. I think it would affect your foreign policy.
Later in 1964, Howard responded to the pressing demands of youth across the world, a generation thirsting for a mighty world aim and purpose. Over 2,400 young men and women from the colleges and high schools of America attended the Conference for Tomorrow's America in Mackinac Island, Michigan.
There was a man called Paul Revere, and he rode, and certain people rode with him. The great majority didn't.
Some of them never left their wives, their beds, their comforts, and their corn. Some turned back. But the people who built a nation and are remembered and thanked by history are those who rode. And you're going out today like so many Paul Reveres. Don't be a bit disconcerted if not everybody rides with you. They won't. Don't be a bit disconcerted if some people get the collywobbles when the bullets fly. They will. But the people who ride and keep on riding are going to make a permanent mark on the history of this country and on the story of liberty. No plan will ever work unless it's backed by convinced, disciplined people. And that's what impresses me so much, that you've caught the vision of a revolutionized America and a revolutionized world, and you're ready to back it with the discipline of your lives, and that's what counts. And diagnosis is one thing, but building an answer that works is another. And a force to take that answer to the nations is a third. Let anybody criticize moral rearmament who have themselves built a force like this to carry an answer to America. If they've done it, let them speak. If they've not done it, let them learn. That's fair enough, isn't it? Now, I want, before I sit down, to say one last thing, and it's about communism. The only intelligent action for those who love liberty is to create a revolution bigger than communism that needs everybody for its fulfillment. So you can say to the communists, we want to revolutionize the world, we're revolutionizing the world, come and help us do it in the right way. That's the only synthesis that will get the Marxist out of his dilemma. And in the next month and 6 months, you have got to match in America the revolutionary passion and relentlessness of men determined to take over Latin America, take over Africa, take over Asia, and not, repeat not, leave the United States and Canada to stew in their own juice. What I hate is the self-righteous condescension of men and women in the free world who say they believe in God, but live as if he never existed, and think we can continue our selfish, comfortable, easy-going, divided life undisturbed. That is modern madness, and I believe you are going out to end it.
We started with 2,400 of us at that Mackinac Island conference. This year we'll be 10,000 and thousands more around the world. Soon we'll be 1 million, ready and decided to match the challenge that Peter Howard handed us. It's a revolution for everybody, young and old, rich and poor. Time is short. The future belongs to those who will change, step out, and do the job with us.
In the last few weeks of his life, leaders of South America invited Peter Howard to their countries. With him was a moral rearmament force of 50 people, including Dame Flora MacLeod of MacLeod, Masa Shibusawa, whose great-grandfather was the founder of modern industrial Japan, and Raj Mohan Gandhi, grandson of Mahatma Gandhi. In Brazil, Dr. Assis Chateaubriand, owner of Brazil's foremost newspaper and television chain, was his host. There he conferred with President Castillo Branco and was welcomed by Favela shantytown dwellers. And he spoke to thousands of militant dock workers. Peter Howard was given one of the greatest receptions ever accorded a foreigner in Peru. It was there he died of virus pneumonia. By order of President Belandi, his body lay in state in the famous City Hall in Lima, where hundreds of citizens paid their respect. Mr. Howard's colleagues met the president at his palace. Messages from the four corners of the earth poured in as statesmen and men of every rank and race honored this revolutionary warrior. There was one from Dr. Konrad Adenauer of Germany which said, Peter Howard gave his life for his ideas and in so doing did the greatest thing any man can achieve. From Vice President Hubert Humphrey, we will remember so well his profound contribution to the spiritual thinking and action of mankind. Speaker of the House of Representatives John W. McCormick sent this message. Few, if any, citizens of other countries have rendered the American people services comparable to Mr. Peter Howard. Brazilian dockers and their families committed themselves to raise 1,000 port workers to fight Howard's battle. The militant students from the University